Holden has always delivered big family cars made for a big country, and this is its newest, the Acadia, a full-size 7-seat SUV in what has become the default suburban runabout these days. It slots into a highly competitive segment against the likes of the Hyundai Santa Fe, Kia Sorento, Mazda CX-9 and Toyota Kluger. And while all of those vehicles are global vehicles, they are primarily designed for America, where big is never big enough. Uniquely though, the Acadia was initially created only for America, badged as a GMC in the US. But then Holden fought hard to adapt it exclusively for Australia in right-hand drive, and then tune it for our tastes. If anything, this is the car that fills the void left by the Aussie-made Commodore. It's spacious, powerful, packed with gear, and great value for money. The Acadia range kicks off at an affordable $42,990 for the entry-level LT in front-wheel drive configuration, which comes fitted with a generous level of standard equipment including 3-zone climate control and an 8-inch infotainment system with sat-nav, digital radio, Bluetooth and smartphone mirroring for Apple and Android devices. The model we're testing here is at the other end of the range, the flagship LTZ-V with all-wheel drive. Costing $67,990, it comes with premium soft grain leather trim with heated and cooled front seats, wireless phone charging, a higher grade 8-speaker Bose audio system, power tailgate, dual sunroof and 20-inch alloy wheels. Mechanically, it also picks up multi-stage suspension, adaptive cruise control, high-intensity headlights and more. Now behind that good-looking body is an equally smart interior. Got good space and there's all the gear you could ever ask for in this top-of-the-range LTZ-V. In front of me is a digital dashboard that's got multi-configurable screens with all the information you could ever need. And there is a high-res touchscreen, which features a nice colourful interface and crisp resolution. There's front and rear parking cameras and also sat-nav and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. From behind the wheel, I find it a bit difficult to find an ideal seating position here. The wheel either feels a little too upright or too far away, and there's not as much under-thigh support as I'd like. And the leather, well, it's not as high quality as you'd expect in a genuine luxury car, but it certainly looks durable enough to handle family wear and tear. There's good small item storage with a deep center console, there's wireless phone charging here in the binnacle at the bottom of the dash, and there's decent door bins in the front here, although the water bottle holders do face forward, so when you're braking hard they can fall into the footwell, which is a bit of a safety hazard. The back seat here is where the Acadia comes really into its own. I'm no wallflower, but I've got a heap of space. While the sunroof does cut into a little bit of headroom, I've certainly got plenty of knee room. There's a flat floor, so all 3 occupants have the same level of tow room. Then there's some niceties like air conditioning controls with vents in the roof, 2 USB chargers, and this handy, pretty deep storage box in the bottom of the center console. To keep the kids hydrated on a long road trip, there are cup holders both in the doors and the center armrest here. Getting in the back seat isn't a drama either. There's big wide doors that open to almost 90 degrees and a one-touch access to the 3rd row, which provides a decent aperture for kids to get in the back there. If you are taking half a soccer team of kids to the sports ground on the weekend and using all 7 seats, like most cars in this class, there is not a lot of luggage room, just enough for a couple of small suitcases. But it does have a pretty clever under-storage area here for wet weather gear or the dirty soccer boots after the game. However, if you are using it as only an occasional 7-seater and just a regular family car, then this expands pretty quickly to have a huge amount of luggage space. Certainly big enough for a family holiday and the weekly duties for a family. Well, there are a number of different model grades in the Acadia range. Mechanically, they are pretty much all the same. Each is powered by a 3.6 litre naturally aspirated V6 and has a 9-speed automatic transmission. The only option you have is whether you choose 2-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And if it was us, I'd actually spend the extra $4,000 on that all-wheel drive system, because from previous experience, that front end in the 2-wheel drive can be pretty overpowered by the engine under hard acceleration, bringing torque steer, and it just feels a little disconnected and aloof. The all-wheel drive system tames that down a little bit, but it still does tug at the steering wheel under quick getaways every now and then. Plus, it brings the extra versatility of this drive mode controller with tailored modes for slippery conditions, for example. As for the engine itself, the Acadia produces some pretty decent numbers, but being naturally aspirated, it does generate them quite high in the rev range, and therefore it does need to work harder to get there. It also means that this 9-speed automatic gearbox is constantly rowing through its cogs to make sure it's in the sweet spot, and you'll always feel it hunting around, swapping in and out of taller ratios, just cruising around town, which can be a little bit annoying. It also takes away from some of that effortlessness the car does have, because at the other end of the spectrum, its naturally aspirated configuration means that it doesn't have that turbo lag, that wait for it, oh, here it all comes. Instead, the throttle position and throttle map is quite smooth, and you don't need a heap of acceleration to actually get away. Instead, it just taps into it. But when you do, it does sound a little bit raucous with a sort of gravelly exhaust note. It's not terribly inspiring. The rest of the package, though, is pretty likeable. The suspension and the chassis and the steering has all been tuned by the crack engineering team at Holden's Lang Lang Proving Ground down in Victoria, and its magic wand can be felt in the way that it drives. It certainly doesn't feel like your average wafty American SUV designed to float over those concrete freeways in the US. Instead, it's actually quite nice. It's well sorted, it's got good body control, it's comfortable without being exemplary, it's still got a little bit of pittery-patteriness on high frequency and sharp bumps, and those big wheels do take a hit on potholes and stuff, and you'll feel that through the cabin. But this is the Holden of the 21st century. This is the car that Holden has always done really, really well, the big family car. It's just that it's changed from what was the Kingswood and then the Commodore to now an SUV. And I'd have to say this is probably the most convincing car in its lineup at the moment. Is it the best in its class? No, there are still options that are a little bit more convincing than this, like the Kia Sorento, the Hyundai Santa Fe, and the Mazda CX-9. But this is a Holden made, not by Australians, but for Australian families. And in that regard, it is a lot of car for its money.